breaking news.
Welcome to Connect the World. I'm Lynda Kinkade at CNN's Worldwide headquarters in Atlanta, filling in for Becky Anderson this hour. Well, we are following the war on two fronts for the American president. One very real, very long and very deadly in Syria. We'll get you the latest on all that in just a second. But first, Donald Trump is facing a possible trade war with China as investors react to news that China is retaliating against planned U.S. tariffs with a threat of new tariffs of its own. China says it will target $50 billion worth of U.S. exports, slapping a 25% tariff on 106 products in all, including soybeans, cars and aircraft. Most of the top soybean producing states went and voted for Mr. Trump in the election, meaning farmers who supported him could end up among those most affected. Well, Mr. Trump's reaction today, what war on trade? He's trying to calm anxieties with this tweet, saying the U.S. is not in a trade war with China because it lost that fight many years ago and is now trying to make up ground. Well, let's bring in our senior international correspondent, Ivan Watson, in Beijing. We also are joined by Richard Quest, host of Quest Means Business at the New York Stock Exchange. Great to have you both with us. I want to go first to Ivan. China calls a trade war a lose-lose situation. It moved very quickly to retaliate against the U.S., and it says it's going to fight to the end.
That's right. I mean, and it's warned ahead of time that this was coming. We saw at the beginning of this week, China responded to a U.S. tariff on steel and aluminum imports with a tariff on $3 billion worth of U.S. goods. And then the Trump administration stepped up the ante with tariffs announced on $50 billion worth of Chinese goods for allegations of intellectual property theft. And hours later, China responded in kind, saying that it was slapping 25% tariffs on some $50 billion worth of U.S. goods in about 106 different categories, among them beef, corn products, aircraft, soybeans. Two of these sectors are very significant, aircraft and soybeans, because they are the two largest economic sector exports from the U.S. to China. Soybeans earned about $14 billion worth of money for the U.S. economy in exports to China in 2016, and so did aircraft. A 25% hike on that could theoretically do some real damage there. Now, the Chinese have gone one step further, Linda, and they've said, hey, there's still room to negotiate here. We haven't levied the tariffs yet. We're going to wait for the next U.S. move to do that. Now is the time to negotiate. Now is the time to cooperate. But they're also making it clear that they're going to respond in the same way to every move that the U.S. makes in what could rapidly become an escalating trade war. Linda.
It certainly looks that way, doesn't it, in terms of the back and forth we are seeing. And it all started, it seems, when President Trump accused China of intellectual property theft.
Yeah, I mean, that's been something that he's alleged for some time. It's been a complaint that American corporations have made in the past as well about technology transfer in exchange for companies investing here in China. Now, the vice minister of commerce was asked about that at a press conference today, during which these tariff measures were being laid out by the Chinese government. He was asked about these accusations of intellectual property theft, which President Trump argues costs the U.S. economy hundreds of billions of dollars. His response to that was that this is fake news. He denied it. And also, it's worth noting, China's saying it will take the U.S. to the World Trade Organization to try to negotiate this, to arbitrate this trade dispute. Linda.
Thanks, Ian. I want to go to Richard Quest, CNN Money's editor-at-large. He is at the New York Stock Exchange there. And uncertainty, Richard, and a global trade war is never good for the markets.
No, and I think that's exactly what you're seeing. The market opened 500 points lower. It's rallied back up. but I would hesitate to say that's terribly meaningful. We're in that part of the day where 100 points in either direction is pretty meaningless. The next time that you really want to pay close attention to what the market's doing is in that last hour before close at 3 o'clock. And the reality, Linda, is that all the big stocks that you would expect, Boeing, Caterpillar, 3M, even McDonald's, Microsoft, anybody who's got business with China is being creamed in the market, and Boeing certainly off 3 to 4% and Caterpillar a similar amount. So look, serious damage being done to the value of these companies, and frankly speaking, at the moment, no end in sight as long as this battle of sanctions and tariffs continues.
And Richard, President Trump said this is not a trade war, seemingly trying to perhaps calm the markets today in a tweet, saying because the US has already lost its trade war. What did you make of that comment?
I don't think that tweet can be interpreted as calming the markets. Bring it up again, and I'll show you why. Yes, Larry Kudlow, the new director of National Economic Council, has said that it's not a trade war, it's merely a trade rebalancing. But if you look at the last line, look at the last line. All right, so we're not in a trade war and then some sophisticated argument or sophistry that the war was lost many years ago, but then goes on to talk about the deficit and the theft of intellectual property. That last sentence, we cannot let this continue. Well, frankly, if he was trying to mollify the markets, you don't do that by basically rounding out with a threat at the end.
You certainly don't. Richard Quest, always good to have you with us from the New York Stock Exchange. Ivan Watson for us. Thank you so much to you both.